Horton's world mythology welcomes you. He called himself the Beast 666, branded the wickedest man in the world. To some, Aleister Crowley was a prophet, to others a dangerous madman. Born into Victorian privilege, he rejected respectability for a life of scandal, magic and rebellion. Crowley's journey led through sex, drugs and occultism, forging a legacy that still fascinates and disturbs. His life was a war against the moral codes of his era, transforming shame into power. Welcome to the story of England's most infamous magician. Was Crowley a true prophet or a masterful charlatan? His followers revered him as the scribe of the Book of the Law and founder of Thelema. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. He built magical orders and offered a path to self-discovery. His writings dense with symbolism and ritual. But critics saw only chaos, addiction, broken relationships and scandal. The Abbey of Thelema became infamous for excess and tragedy. Crowley's life was a paradox, spiritual insight or self-indulgence. We present the evidence, you decide where the truth lies. Edward Alexander Crowley was born into wealth and strict religious devotion. His father, a preacher for the Plymouth Brethren, ruled the home with prayer and moral discipline. Young Crowley's curiosity clashed with a world that saw deviation as sin. His mother viewed his independence as wickedness, fueling a battle of wills. This oppressive upbringing forged a rebel, laying the groundwork for Crowley's later philosophy of personal freedom. In the fires of absolute faith, the beast was born. Crowley's mother, exasperated by his defiance, called him the Beast, a name from Revelation. Instead of shame, he embraced it, transforming insult into identity. The label became his symbol of rebellion, a badge of power against conformity. Crowley adopted 666, cementing his role as the ultimate outsider. This act of self-creation set him on a path of legend and infamy. The beast was not a curse, but a conscious choice. Crowley's world shattered when his father died of cancer. The loss destroyed his faith in Christianity, fueling anger and cynicism. Inheriting a fortune, Crowley gained the freedom to pursue his own desires. The death of his father removed all restraint, unleashing his rebellion. Money became the key to escape, and grief became fuel for defiance. Crowley's quest for power and meaning began in the shadow of loss. The boy who lost his father set out to overthrow his heavenly one. Crowley's education, after his father's death, became a battle against harsh, dogmatic schools run by the Plymouth Brethren. He responded to cruelty with defiance, mastering subversion and turning every forbidden act into a victory. Illness forced him to leave, but only strengthened his resolve. Crowley left school a hardened cynic, ready to seek his own path. In 1895, Crowley broke from his past, enrolling at Trinity College, Cambridge, and renaming himself Aleister, a ritual of rebirth. Cambridge offered freedom and new identity, far from his strict upbringing. He embraced poetry, sexuality and rebellion, forging his own path. A mystical vision in Stockholm ignited his lifelong quest for hidden knowledge. In 1895, Edward Alexander Crowley entered Trinity College, Cambridge, shedding his old name for Aleister, a bold act of self-creation. Aleister was the name of his future, a legend he would write himself. At Cambridge he thrived, sharpening his mind, mastering chess and pouring passion into poetry. Free from his past, Crowley embraced his desires and began forging a new path, one of freedom, intellect and self-mythology. In the winter of 1896, alone in Stockholm, Aleister Crowley had a mystical vision that shattered his materialism. He glimpsed a vast impersonal power, terrifyingly beautiful, beyond ordinary senses. This moment reoriented his life, igniting a quest for magical knowledge and a new purpose to understand and repeat that experience. Crowley's curiosity turned to the esoteric. He hunted rare grimoires, studied alchemy and tarot, and saw magic as a science, an experimental process of cause and effect. This obsession set him apart at Cambridge, living between two worlds, academic by day, occultist by night. The Golden Dawn beckoned, a gateway to the hidden arts Crowley could not resist. Even as Crowley turned to the occult, his poetry became darker and more magical, a vessel for his obsessions. His verses explored the interplay of darkness and light, the sacred nature of sexuality, and the quest for godhood. For Crowley, art and magic were one. His poetry was a bridge between the man of letters and the magician he was becoming. In 1898, Aleister Crowley found the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a secret society devoted to ceremonial magic and forbidden knowledge. For Crowley, it was the magical university he'd been searching for. The rituals were powerful, the secrecy strict, and Crowley's obsession quickly set him apart from the rest. Upon joining the Golden Dawn, Crowley chose the motto Frater perdurabo, Brother, I will endure, a vow of unwavering commitment to the great work. He pursued magic with relentless ambition, experimenting with rituals, drugs and meditation, always pushing boundaries and evolving within the order. Aleister Crowley's rapid rise and unorthodox ways clashed with the Golden Dawn's London leadership, especially W.B. Yeats, who saw Crowley as reckless and lacking discipline. When Crowley demanded entry to the inner order, Yeats and the council refused, fearing his ambition. Feeling betrayed, Crowley turned to Mathers in Paris, who initiated him, igniting open rebellion. Crowley returned to London, ready for war. He led a dramatic assault on the Golden Dawn's temple, sparking a bitter schism. The order fractured, its secrets exposed, and Crowley was expelled, yet he emerged hardened, free to forge his own path. After leaving the Golden Dawn, Crowley became a magical free agent, isolated but free to forge his own path. He experimented boldly, combining systems and traveling the world, seeking wisdom beyond old boundaries. Crowley became an order of one, answering only to his own true will. After leaving the magical world behind, Aleister Crowley turned to mountaineering, seeking a new challenge for his will. In 1902, he joined Oscar Eckenstein's expedition to K2, the Savage Mountain, facing brutal storms and hardship. Though they failed to summit, Crowley's daring and ambition made him a legend, yet also revealed his darker, divisive side. In 1905, Crowley led an expedition up Kanchenjunga. His strict, aloof leadership caused tension. Disaster struck when an avalanche killed 4 men. Crowley, accused of abandoning his team, was branded a coward. The tragedy haunted him, a shadow over his achievements and a chilling lesson in indifference. After the Kanchenjunga scandal, Crowley impulsively married Rose Kelly, shocking everyone. Their union, though unexpected, led to a surprising happiness and a grand honeymoon across Europe and Egypt. In Cairo, Rose fell into a trance, insisting the god Horus was calling Crowley. At the Bulak Museum, she led him to a stele numbered 666, his own number. The coincidence changed everything. The discovery of the stele of revealing transformed Crowley's life, leading to a mysterious voice dictating a new scripture. For 3 days, Crowley wrote as a secretary for Aiwass, channeling the Book of the Law. Its message, "Do what thou wilt, shall be the whole of the law." The voice in the void gave Crowley his mission, and a new spiritual era was born. Aleister Crowley returned from Egypt transformed, no longer just an occultist, but the prophet of a new spiritual age, the Aeon of Horus. The book of the law declared, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," a radical call to discover and pursue one's true will. Crowley embraced his role, dedicating his life to teaching Thelema, gathering followers and shaping a new era. To spread, Thelema, Crowley and George Cecil Jones founded the AA, the Order of the Silver Star, in 1907. Its purpose, guide individuals to enlightenment, not social status. The AA was a meritocracy of the soul, with each member advancing through proven attainment, forging a chain of enlightened individuals for the new eon. Crowley needed a worldly face for Thelema. He found it in the Ordo Templi Orientis, a secretive German fraternity. After discovering their central secret, Crowley was initiated and soon led the OTO, transforming it into a church for the new eon. Its rituals, especially the Gnostic Mass, celebrated the sacredness of life and the divinity of every individual. Throughout this period of organizational activity, Crowley's creative output was staggering. He was a volcano of words, producing a relentless stream of books, poems, plays and journals. His primary vehicle for publishing his work was a lavish, beautifully produced periodical called The Equinox. Subtitled The Review of Scientific Illuminism, it was the official organ of the AA. Each issue contained a mix of poetry, short stories, reviews, and most importantly, the core instructional papers and rituals of his magical system. He published it on a strict biannual schedule at the spring and autumn equinoxes to demonstrate the discipline and order behind his seemingly chaotic life. It was a massive undertaking, funded largely from his dwindling inheritance. Beyond the equinox, he wrote some of his most influential and notorious books. In 1922, he published Diary of a Drug Fiend, a novel that drew heavily on his own experiences with heroin and cocaine addiction. While sensationalized by the press as a manual for debauchery, Crowley intended it as a cautionary tale. A story of falling into the abyss of addiction and finding the way out through the power of true will. He also penned fantastical novels like Moonchild, which depicted a magical war between a white lodge and a black lodge, a story that mirrored his own perceived battles with rival occultists. Each work was a brick in the edifice of his legend. His masterwork from this period, and perhaps of his entire life, was the massive tome now known as Book 4, or Magic in Theory and Practice. This was his definitive statement on his magical system, a comprehensive textbook for the aspiring magician. It laid out his philosophical principles, his psychological theories, and detailed instructions for a vast array of magical techniques. He famously defined magic as the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. This practical, non-superstitious definition was revolutionary. It removed magic from the realm of spooky fantasy and repositioned it as a powerful form of spiritual psychology and personal development. This torrent of words established Crowley as one of the most significant and original thinkers in the history of Western esotericism. He was not just practicing magic, he was redefining it for the modern age. Yet this prolific output came at a great personal cost. He poured his fortune into his publishing ventures, driving himself ever closer to bankruptcy. His work was often met with public scorn and condemnation, dismissed as the ravings of a madman or the work of a pornographer. But Crowley was undeterred. He was on a prophet's path, and he believed that the words he was writing were not just for his own time, but for generations to come. In 1920, seeking to create a perfect environment to practice and teach his philosophy, Crowley established a spiritual community in Cefalu, a small fishing village in Sicily. He called it the Abbey of Thelema. This was to be his Collegium ad Spiritum Sanctum, a college of the Holy Spirit, a place where individuals could live the law of Thelema in its purest form, free from the constraints of the outside world. He leased a small single-story villa and, with his followers, decorated its walls with vibrant, explicit and often disturbing murals depicting the pantheon of Thelemic gods and various sexual and magical acts. The Abbey was to be a laboratory for the new eon. Life at the Abbey was a combination of strict magical discipline and absolute personal freedom. The day was structured around rituals, yoga practice, and the study of Crowley's works. But beyond this, the core principle was do what thou wilt. This led to an atmosphere of intense psychological and sexual experimentation. A succession of followers, including his current Scarlet Woman, Leah Hersig, came to live with him. They practiced sex magic, used drugs like heroin and cocaine to aid their visions, and pushed themselves to their physical and mental limits. Crowley believed this intense, boundary-dissolving environment was necessary to break down the ego and allow the true will to emerge. However, the utopia quickly soured. The Abbey descended into squalor, poverty and tragedy. The residents were often ill, underfed and psychologically unstable. The constant drug use took a heavy toll. The dream of a liberated community devolved into a grim reality of addiction and personal chaos. The breaking point came in 1923 when a young English follower named Raoul Loveday died at the Abbey, supposedly after drinking contaminated water. Loveday's wife, Betty May, fled back to London and sold her sensationalized story to the tabloid press, painting a lurid picture of black magic, blood sacrifice and debauchery. The stories created a massive public scandal. The British press branded Crowley the wickedest man in the world and the king of depravity. The lurid tales of animal sacrifice, Crowley admitted to sacrificing a cat, and drug-fueled orgies horrified the public. The Italian government, under the new fascist leadership of Benito Mussolini, took notice of the degenerate foreign cult on their soil. In April 1923, Crowley was unceremoniously expelled from Italy. His great experiment in communal living brought to a humiliating and public end. The Abbey of Thelema, meant to be the shining beacon of the new eon, had become a symbol of his greatest failure, a testament to the dark and destructive side of his prophetic path. Exiled from Sicily in 1923, Aleister Crowley became a wandering outcast, drifting through Europe as his fortune vanished and his reputation crumbled. Addiction and poverty haunted him, yet Crowley never abandoned his great work, seeing his suffering as a final ordeal for the magician. Even in exile, he clung to hope, convinced his legacy would endure. By the late 1930s, Crowley returned to England, living out his final years in obscurity at Netherwood, a boarding house in Hastings. Once the wickedest man in the world, he became a local curiosity, frail, eccentric, but still sharp-minded, creating his most enduring works and teaching a few young admirers until the end. The man who had lived as a raging storm now faced the inevitable calm at the end of all things. Crowley's final magical acts included The Book of Thoth and Magic Without Tears, works that sealed his legacy and guided future Thelemites. He choreographed his own death as a last Thelemic ritual, seeing it as a transition, not an end. The beast was finally still, but his magical legacy was just beginning to unfold. Crowley's funeral, held a few days after his death at the Brighton Crematorium, was his final performance and perhaps his most successful scandal. Following his precise instructions, it was a purely Thelemic ceremony, a pagan rite in the heart of post-war Christian England. His friend Louis Wilkinson officiated, reading the Gnostic Mass Collect and Crowley's powerful pantheistic Hymn to Pan. The ceremony shocked the small gathering of mourners and the crematorium staff. The local press was scandalized, running headlines like "Black Magic Rites at Crematorium" and sparking outrage in the local council. Even in death, Crowley had managed to provoke, to challenge, and to force people to confront ideas they would rather ignore. His last will and testament was equally unconventional. He left what little money he had to the OTO, the organization he had reshaped into a vessel for Thelema. His literary legacy, the copyrights to his vast body of work, was also bequeathed to the order, ensuring that his books would remain in print and his teachings would be preserved. He appointed his successor, Carl Germer, to lead the OTO after his death, attempting to secure a line of succession that would prevent the kind of chaos that had destroyed the Golden Dawn. He was planning for his own immortality, not of the body, but of the ideas to which he had dedicated his life. However, the immediate aftermath of his death was not one of glorious resurrection, but of confusion and decline. Carl Germer was a quiet, scholarly man, not a charismatic leader like Crowley. The OTO languished, becoming nearly dormant for several decades. The various Thelemic groups around the world were small, fragmented, and often at odds with one another. It seemed as though Crowley's great work might simply fade into obscurity, the strange obsession of a forgotten Edwardian eccentric. The prophet was dead, and his church seemed to be dying with him, his law silenced by the end of his own life. The world at large seemed eager to forget him. He was dismissed as a charlatan, a pornographer, and a drug-addled madman. His philosophical and magical ideas were largely ignored by mainstream academia and culture. He had died penniless and publicly reviled, a footnote in the history of the bizarre. For a time, it appeared that his critics had won. The beast had been slain, his abbey was in ruins, and his followers were scattered to the winds. The new eon he had proclaimed seemed to have been a delusion, a grand prophecy that ended in a quiet room in a seaside boarding house. The law, it seemed, was over. But a shadow as large as the one cast by Aleister Crowley does not simply vanish. As the conservative 1950s gave way to the counterculture of the 1960s, his ideas found fertile new ground. A generation rebelling against the establishment discovered in Crowley a powerful icon of spiritual and personal freedom. His famous maxim, "Do what thou wilt," resonated deeply with the spirit of the age. His image famously appeared on the cover of the Beatles' album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and rock stars like Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin became avid collectors of his work, helping to resurrect his name from obscurity and reintroduce him to popular culture. The OTO, which had nearly faded away, was revived in the late 1960s by one of Crowley's last surviving students in California. It began to grow, attracting a new generation of seekers drawn to Crowley's promise of a rational, experiential approach to spirituality. Today, the OTO is an international organization with thousands of members, and the AA continues to guide students through its rigorous system of attainment. His books, once rare and suppressed, are now widely available and have been translated into numerous languages. The prophet who died in obscurity is now one of the most influential figures in modern Western esotericism. Crowley's influence can be seen far beyond the world of occultism. He is a foundational figure in the history of modern alternative religions and New Age movements. His insistence on magic as a psychological technology prefigured many concepts in transpersonal psychology. His frank exploration of sexuality as a spiritual path helped pave the way for later movements that sought to heal the divide between the spirit and the flesh. He remains a deeply polarizing figure, a hero to some, a villain to others, but his impact is undeniable. He forced a conversation about the nature of will, freedom, and divinity that continues to this day. So what is the final verdict on Aleister Crowley? Was he a genuine prophet who received a new revelation for humanity, or a brilliant drug-addicted megalomaniac who created a religion to justify his own desires? Perhaps the answer is that he was both. He was a flawed vessel for a powerful message, a man whose personal failings were as colossal as his spiritual ambitions. His life remains a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ego. Yet his work continues to inspire those who seek a path to liberation outside the confines of mainstream faith. The shadow of the beast, 666, endures, challenging us, repelling us, and forever inviting us to question the limits of our own will. Crowley remains a polarizing figure. Prophet or madman, genius or brute, his ghost still haunts our culture. The answer lies in understanding our capacity for darkness and light. And ask yourself, do you believe, do you dare to explore the unknown, to confront the shadows that lurk in the dark corners of our world? We may stumble upon truths more unsettling than the shadows themselves. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through the history of Aleister Crowley. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to Horton's World Mythology for more explorations into the world's most fascinating myths and legends. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What other mythical creatures or legends would you like us to explore next? Share your ideas and let's keep the flame burning bright. And as always, stay curious.